It's the question that Ted Winstar infamously asked back in 1970. What is it good for? Well, absolutely nothing. Or maybe there is a reason for it. Wars usually happen because two sides are trying to solve a dispute, whether it's over land or differing political ideologies. War never changes. Wars can be short, like the Anglo-Zanzibar War in 1896, which only lasted from 38 to 45 minutes. Or they can be long, like the Iroquois War that lasted 289 years. But that's not what we're here for. History can get pretty weird. And the battles can get even weirder. So I found the strangest wars ever fought in history, and I'm gonna be discussing them all with you guys today. So let's begin, going in the chronological order that they happened in. Up first is the Nika riot in 532 AD. In the Byzantine Empire, people protested over their Emperor Justinian I. It started out as a dispute over sports, specifically over the blue and green chariot racing factions. However, it quickly spiraled into them refusing to be heavily taxed. This was an attempt to overthrow their leader which, as you may have guessed, did not go well. The riot got its name from people chanting Nika, which means conquest or victory, to protest his tax policies. When an execution of two faction members was botched, they were left alive and seeking sanctuary in the church. This caused the whole thing to escalate, leading to mobs breaking out thousands of prisoners and them setting fire to major government and religious buildings. This included the Hagia Sophia, which was originally an Orthodox Christian cathedral in Istanbul back in 537 AD. The rioting left Justinian trapped in his castle for 5 days, which made him contemplate fleeing the sea to save himself. His solution then came when his wife, Empress Theodora, delivered a speech about how the imperial robes make for an excellent way to wrap dead bodies. After gaining a sense of bravery, he ordered his generals Belisarius and Mundus to deal with the mob. They closed the exits to the Hippodrome off and trapped them together so that they can attack them. This massacre led to 30,000 deaths, which probably means that all the protesters died. Practically speaking, they threw their lives away for nothing. How smart. However, it's not nearly as stupid as this next war. The War of Jenkins's Ear sparked when Captain Robert Jenkins, a Welsh master mariner, displayed an ear of his that got cut off to the British Parliament, claiming that the Spanish Coast Guards were responsible for it. Its actual start was due to deep-seated trade disputes and smuggling in the Americas. This took place in the Caribbean along the Florida-Georgia border and lasted 9 years, starting in 1739 and ending in 1748. British merchants were peeved by strict Spanish trade restrictions in the West Indies. The ear gave the British public a reason to start a war. Over an ear, mind you. That's a strange reason to wanting to start war with someone else. Regardless though, the British Admiral Edward Vernon initially succeeded when he captured Portobello, but he would then suffer defeat at the Battle of Cartagena de Indias in 1741. This loss was a combination of devastating tropical disease, brilliant Spanish defective tactics led by General Blas de Lezo, and severe command disputes. After he failed, he retreated to Jamaica. Meanwhile, in North America, an attempt was made by the British forces from the province of Georgia to invade Spanish Florida. But they failed to capture St. Augustine, and this led to the Spanish retaliating against them by invading Georgia. Unfortunately, they were defeated by the British. This war concluded with the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, which established peace in Europe by restoring the conquered territories. And while that war was stupid because of what fueled it, this next war was stupid because of what happened in the war. If you ever think you're stupid, just remember that the Austrian forces shot each other during the Austro-Turkish War. That was mostly due to a drunk brawl over alcohol and language barriers though, as the Austrian cavalry units scouted for Ottoman troops across the Timi River. They found locals selling schnapps, which are fruit-infused brandies that are made by distilling fruit. They then got drunk, demanded a share of the alcohol, and shots were fired. During this, the infantrymen mistakenly thought an Ottoman vanguard was attacking, and some of them shouted, "Turks, Turks!" As the cavalry fled, the main army's sentries opened fire. Due to the language barrier, when the officers yelled a German command for "halt, halt," the soldiers that didn't speak German misinterpreted it as them saying, "Allah, Allah." This then escalated to the point where they fired at each other and destroyed their own supply wagons. When the Ottoman army arrived at the town 2 days later, the area was abandoned and littered with thousands of Austrian casualties. And while in this war the Austrians fought against themselves, America would join forces with Germany in order to take down Waffen-SS in this next war. Yes, you heard that correctly. American troops teamed up with anti-Nazi German troops and armed French prisoners to defend a 19th-century Austrian castle against attacking Waffen-SS loyalists. Their army captain, John Jackley, led a dozen of his soldiers alongside German Major Joseph Gangl. Joseph abandoned the Austrian resistance and a soldier of the SS abandoned the rest of their branch. The French prisoners included French Prime Ministers Édouard Daladier and Paul Reynaud, along with French generals. As they neared the Austrian Alps, the Waffen-SS troops launched an assault on the castle to massacre its prisoners. The defenders, who were almost out of bullets, held the line until reinforcements appeared at 4 p.m. The only casualty in this battle was of Joseph, who was killed by a sniper whilst shielding Paul. This was the only war in World War II where the Americans fought alongside the Germans. Next we have the Battle of Picacho Pass. After a Confederate force of 120 cavalrymen arrived at Tucson from Texas on February 28, 1862, they proclaimed it as the capital of the Western District of the Confederate Arizona Territory. It was made up by what is now southern Arizona and southern New Mexico. Missoula, which is near Las Cruces, was declared the territorial capital and seat of the Eastern District of the territory. The property belonging to Tucson Unionists was confiscated and they were either jailed or driven out of town. Confederates were hoping that a flood of sympathizers in Southern California would join them and give the Confederacy an outlet on the Pacific Ocean, but it never happened. California Unionists were eager to prevent it, and 2,000 Union volunteers from California, known as the California Column and led by Colonel James Henry Carleton, moved east to Fort Yuma. By May 1862, the small Confederate force was driven back into Texas. 12 Union cavalry troops and 1 scout, who was initially reported to be Pauline Weaver but, in reality, it was John W. Jones, which were commanded by Lieutenant James Barrett of the 1st California Cavalry, were conducting a sweep of the Picacho Peak area, looking for nearby Confederates. Sergeant Henry Holmes commanded the Arizona Confederates. Barrett was under orders to not engage with them but rather to wait for the main column to come up. However, Barrett acted on his own and surprised the rebels. He should have captured them without having to fire any shots if it was conducted properly. Instead, he did not dismount them and they were fired at, being dropped from their saddles. When the enemy went farther into the trees and had time to reload, Barrett followed them and called on his men to go along with him. 3 Confederates surrendered. Barrett secured one of the prisoners and he just remounted his horse when a bullet struck him in the neck, which would end up killing him. Fighting against the Mesquite Arroyos for 90 minutes with 2 more Union fatalities and 3 troopers wounded. Being left without a leader and being pretty exhausted, the Californians broke off the fight, and the Arizona Rangers, who were down 3 soldiers after they surrendered, mounted and carried warning of the approaching Union army to Tucson. Barrett's disobedience cost him his life and lost the chance to pull off a surprise attack on Tucson. The Union troops retreated to the Pima Indian village and hastily built a fort named in Barrett's honor at White's Mill, waiting to gather resources to continue the advance. However, because there were no Confederate reinforcements, Captain Sherrod Hunter withdrew as soon as the column again advanced. Without an opposition, the Union troops entered Tucson. The bodies of 2 Union enlisted men that were killed at Picacho, those being George Johnson and William S. Leonard, were later removed to the National Cemetery at the Presidio of San Francisco in California. However, Barrett's grave, reportedly buried near the train tracks, remains undisturbed and unmarked as the site was lost. Union reports claimed that 2 Confederates were wounded in the fight, but Captain Hunter, in his report, did not list any Confederate casualties other than the 3 men who were captured. One of the rebels, named John Hill, was recognized by Private Frank Clark, who were both from Napa. Next we have the Battle of the Crater. During the Siege of Petersburg, Pennsylvania, miners in the Union ranks dug a long tunnel under Confederate lines, packed it with 4 tons of gunpowder and detonated it, hoping to bypass the massive hole. They instead got trapped in the tunnel and 300 soldiers were killed. The explosion also created a 170 feet long, 60 feet wide and 30 feet deep crater. Union commanders had trained a fresh division of black soldiers, otherwise known as the United States Colored Troops, to lead the assault, but last-minute orders made them send in unprepared white units instead. After the Confederates overcame the initial shock from the crater blast, they fired down into the trapped Union forces. When the black troops were sent in though, Brutal combat ensued. The Confederates refused to accept any surrenders from the black troops, which resulted in a targeted massacre in and around the pit. When the day was coming to an end, the Union forces were forced to retreat. 3,800 casualties were suffered compared to the 1,200 Confederate casualties. The way the attack was handled led to Ulysses S. Grant calling it the saddest affair he witnessed in the war. As a result, the Union General Ambrose Burnside was demolished and the siege was delayed for another 8 months. I'm not exactly sure how to start my description of the next war off, so let's just get into the next war. The incident at Petrich, known by many as the War of the Stray Dog, it started when a Greek soldier chased his dog across the border into Bulgarian territory and was shot by border guards. The Greek troops retaliated by invading a border town, which prompted a short-lived military standoff. The League of Nations then intervened by ordering Greece to withdraw and pay reparations. But did you know that there was a second version of how it happened? Well, there was. That version claimed that Bulgarian soldiers crossed the Greek border and attacked a Greek outpost at Belasica, as well as killing a Greek captain and a sentry. That first version definitely makes this weirder. Now we have the pastry war. It's called that because it triggered a French pastry chef living in Mexico City who demanded compensation from the Mexican government after his bakery was robbed by unruly Mexican officers. The chef, Monsieur Montal, claimed an astounding 60,000 pesos in damages for his destroyed shop, even though it was only valued at 1,000 pesos. Because the Mexican government refused to pay him, he took it up with French King Louis Philippe. The French government, which was already upset by other unpaid financial debts owed to French citizens by Mexico, used this incident as a reason to start the war. France demanded 60,000 pesos in reparations. Mexico, once again, refused to pay, so the French Navy blocked off key Mexican ports in the Gulf of Mexico, or what Donald Trump decided to rename it to for some reason, the Gulf of America, and bombarded the fortress of San Juan de Ala in Veracruz in 1838. This conflict lasted a few months until the British diplomats broke it up with a peace treaty a year after. And while this war started over French pastries, this next war started over a pig. The Pig War was a border dispute in 1859 that sparked because of the shooting of a pig. Funny enough, the black hog was the only casualty in the entire war. An American farmer named Lyman Cutler shot them because they were in his garden eating his potatoes. The pig belonged to an Irish employee of the British Hudson's Bay Company. British authorities threatened to arrest the man and evict all as citizens, so Americans requested military protection. General William S. Harney sent US troops to the island under the command of Captain George Pickett, who became famous later on for his role in the American Civil War. In response to this, the British sent 5 heavily armed warships, escalating this conflict into a tense military standoff. Both sides did stand down eventually, and the island was under peaceful joint military operation until 1872, when international arbitration gave the islands to the United States. And while they went to war over a pig, Japan went to war with America over an unidentified flying object. In the Battle of Los Angeles, Americans were notified of an unidentified flying object through radar blips and blinking lights. Commanders ordered a blackout as they expected an attack within 10 hours. As they shot up into the sky expecting to hit someone, they lit up the sky with their gunfire as the shells themselves would fall and vehicle would crash. There ended up being no enemy planes, and the Americans just ended up being trigger-happy and panicked because of Pearl Harbor happening 3 months before this incident. 5 civilians died because of this. It was concluded that this event was caused by a lost weather balloon. And apologies for saying that Japan went to war with America over this. I actually meant America went to war with Japan over it. Apparently I'm a dumbass. But regardless of that, let's move on. The last war we're gonna be covering is the Battle of Athens. This rebellion lasted from August 1st to August 2nd of 1946. World War II veterans who returned from the war claimed that the local government was corrupt and rebelled against it. The government utilized voter intimidation, policing that profiled certain individuals and rigging votes to maintain power. In the early 1940s, McMinn County, which is located in Tennessee, was dominated by a political machine that was under the control of Sheriff Paul Cantrell. His administration advocated for police brutality, extortion of taxpayers, and using armed deputies to sway the polls. These veterans then challenged the administration in the 1946 election. When election day arrived, The deputies made attempts to suppress veteran votes, stationed armed guards at the polling places and seized the polling boxes. The veterans raised the local National Guard armory with weapons out of the fear that the election was rigged and were heading to the county jail where the corrupt officials hid themselves behind the ballot boxes. The GIs then had them surrounded. And after finding out that gunfire was ineffective, they just blew a chunk of the entrance open using a stick of dynamite. The veterans then gained the control back, counted each individual vote and determined that their candidates won. They successfully dismantled the corrupt government that served as a powerful way to fight for your right. And those are all the weird wars I could find. There are definitely more, so let me know which ones I failed to cover in this video. And if you would like to see more of these history videos, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, it helps me out a lot. And until the next weird history video, I am signing off.